Welcome, everyone, to your ongoing journey or leap into a new world of opportunity. Inside Japan Podcast is a stepping stone for your next adventure. It is a show filled with informative interviews, perspectives on local life, and how you can master your path into the unknown. For today, kick back and listen to the wisdom of our host, James.
James here, coming at you with episode number 55 of the Inside Japan Podcast, brought to you by jobsinjapan.com and the Patreon supporters out there. Hope everyone's doing well. This week we got a hot one with a little bit of an interesting story here. Someone that's no longer in Japan, but they had a successful 3-year stint on the JET program. We talk about how they got that job, their thoughts on the JET program as a whole, blah, 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 how we got a part of the alumni side of things. And then we talk about how he had to go through a situation while he was a JET. That was interesting. I don't want to spoil anything again. And then he decided to go back to his home country and start a job that was still in the language field. And he's still doing that. He's still doing that now. So sit back, enjoy my story with Daniel. He is now working for onestonelearning.com. He created it, I should say. So yeah, be sure to check that out if you want to learn more about what he's doing now. But yeah, sit back and enjoy my story with Daniel from One Stone Learning. Enjoy. All right, guys, very special guest today. His name is Daniel, a former JET participant. How you doing tonight, Daniel?
I'm doing great, James. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, sure. So I think you have a lot to share here with future, current, past JETs here. So I want to hear your story for sure. So I guess let's start though with you have a kind of a unusual current position. I think that most people on the show won't be doing. So first, let's say that. What are you doing currently for a profession, wherever that happens to be, and please spoil that as well.
Sure thing. So right now I'm in Columbus, Ohio. I've been in Columbus since 2010. Right now I currently have my own small business. It is called Two Birds, One Stone Learning. We provide supplemental education support to the community at large. It just so happens that the Japanese automotive company Honda is right up the road from where we're at, and many of our clients are the Japanese expat. We provide service to those folks.
Cool. So they're still connected to Japan in some way, and yeah, we're going to talk about Two Birds, One Stone Learning a lot at the end of this interview. We're going to learn more about what you're doing now, but let's start at the beginning of the journey, right? So you were a former JET, you're a JET alumni, so I guess I should ask, what led to your decision to even apply to the JET program to work in Japan in the first place? Sure.
So for me, the making my way to the JET program was kind of a unique situation, as my introduction to Japan was about a decade prior as a junior enlisted service person in Yokosuka, Japan. So at that point, I was a 20-year-old. I had never left the United States, and had the opportunity to serve my first tour of duty on an aircraft carrier in Yokosuka, Japan. I got to experience Japan, just a little bit of it from that experience, and it ultimately led to my decision to return to college, get my 4-year degree. And then throughout the whole process, everyone was telling me, if you're really interested in Japan, there's this program called JET. You may want to look into it. So after hearing that, a half a dozen times, I decided to look into it, and was very fortunate to, when I applied, to be accepted onto the program.
Cool. Okay, so real quick though, you say you were a Yokosuka. I don't know if you're much of a video gamer, but that is where the game Shenmue is famously located. So a lot of people go there. I don't know if you know this. People go there now just to kind of check out where the game was the home base of the game. Do you know about that game? You into gaming at all?
I not really into gaming, and I am pretty into Yokosuka since it was my first home in Japan, and it's a place that will always be near and dear to my heart. But I did not know that Yokosuka had this alternative connection to I guess the gaijin world.
Yeah. Because there's a famous line in the game where it says, "Have you seen any sailors around here?" So I guess you were one of those sailors that the main character is looking for. That's pretty cool. So anyways, back on track here.
Sure.
Okay, so you apply for the JET program. You have a good story, I guess. You have some time in Japan. That's always a plus on your application and stuff. Is there any kind of do you have any interesting things to tell us about your interview process? Was it smooth? Was it difficult for you? How'd that go?
I thought the interview process was kind of interesting because it was my first time having that that panel interview where you have like a JET alumni person, probably a person from the educational field, a professor from a local university, and then that third person being a consulate person. The interview process was unique in that regard. The interview process was also unique because I remember at one point they wanted me to sing "Happy Birthday."
Okay.
And this was, back in 2004, so I don't know if that's something they do. But I guess for me, I had that real experience, which kind of really stuck to me, and I basically told a story of the time that I went to Kamakura, which is a place that's relatively close to Yokosuka. And I told them this story of how I went to Kamakura, and I had gotten turned around, but a passenger on the train, an older Japanese woman, basically took me by the hand and kind of helped me get from one part of the train station to another. And that was kind of I guess the seed that was planted in my heart that said, you know what, Japan, the Japanese culture, the Japanese people, it's a really special thing, and it's something that I need to look into, further.
Oh, good. That's a good story to tell at an interview for sure. How you really have a history with Japan and you have that connection with someone that helped you. And yeah, that's a good thing to share for the interview for sure. If anyone has any other stories like that, for sure. Okay, so then you get the happy email or maybe the call, and they said, hey, you're coming to Japan. Did you get where you were hoping to go? Did you get to the countryside? Did you get a city? Tell us about your placement.
Absolutely. So for me, it was 2004. Email was there, so I did definitely get that email, and it was one of those over the moon moments, just happy as can be. And for me, it was doubly happy because I got the placement that I wanted. I was a married jet at that time. I was an older jet. And I had that experience before, so I was older than the average jet. But for me, my wife is from Japan, and she's actually from Tokyo. So being placed in Saitama, about 45 minutes from central Tokyo, was really you couldn't ask for anything more. So again, I was very fortunate, and obviously those type of placements on jet are probably few and far between, if at all, in today's current climate.
Yeah. I think it's like hoping for a city is just like, yeah, you can hope for it, but don't expect it in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, you got lucky there with that placement, and even these days, even less chance for that. But yeah, so now you got placed in a city, good placement next to your wife's family and stuff. So that's pretty hype. And yeah, now your time to start your career in Japan. So can you tell us about the beginning, maybe the first month, first week or something? How was your beginning of your jet career?
So like all jets, we kind of have that big gathering in Tokyo when you get off the plane in Narita, and had that 2-day conference, and I liked it. I thought it was good. Obviously, for a lot of folks, being in Tokyo and kind of having that freedom, it was one of those situations where you kind of saw a few people kind of maybe doing some few things that maybe not recommended. So, if Kabukicho is still on your bucket list in Japan, I probably would not do that right when you get off the plane in Tokyo.
yeah, that can wait.
And then from there, it was just a relatively short bus ride for us up to Saitama. We got to our Danchi, if I recall correctly, and met the other jets, and at that point, it was a municipal placement, and there was 16 jets that kind of made the ALT position work in that city in Saitama, and we basically kind of laid low that first couple of weeks and didn't do a whole heck of a lot other than meeting the various people from the Board of Education and maybe going to a few schools here or there, but more or less just kind of go, not to go to work. So it really didn't do anything until the first part of September.
Yeah, it's pretty normal. So normal. Sometimes you don't have much to do, and you kind of, hey, you got to shake hands with the principal and stuff, but then you're really doing a lot of desk warming. So what? The 16 people in one place, and you kind of probably live next to each other as well. It's kind of a lot. So, what did you think of that initial group? Was that a positive or negative? You think in your mind, looking back, because in many ways it can be positive. Hey, you have an instant group of friends to do stuff with. It can be negative as well because hey, why do you got to interact with the Japanese people if you got this kind of instant group of friends, right? So what was it like for you?
Again, I guess for me, it was, on the one hand, it was good because you had, if you had a lot of questions, and I think a lot of people do when they first get there, they can easily ask, one of those 16 people, what's it like? And in some cases, you're going to the Danchi unit that you go into, or at least in our case, you're replacing a person that's outgoing, and you've had that communication beforehand, and they can kind of give you the lay of the land and that sort of thing. Initially, I thought it was good. You had that support group, but at the same time, kind of like why did you want to come to Japan? I don't think a lot of people, but maybe I don't want to speak to I guess in general terms, but I don't think a lot of people go to Japan to live and work there to say, hey, I'm just going to spend time with the foreigners, the international community. I think a lot of them want to explore and take that journey into what the Japan community and the Japanese people can offer. So I guess it's a double-edged sword.
Just to say, there's nothing wrong with those. A lot of people do like you and want to be a part of the Japan and, want to live in Japan. Some people, though, would just want to, hey, I want to travel, and this is a cool way to travel for a year in Japan. That's nothing wrong with that, too, as long as you do your job. That's what I always say.
Right.
So, yeah, so then now, the title of this podcast is probably going to be something about breaking contracts. So let's inch our way towards there. What kind of did you think, I don't know, I'm not sure when that decision happened, but can you tell me the first kind of negative thought you started having about the JET program or your placement or both or whatever that was? When did things kind of start, hey, maybe this isn't for me?
Yeah, so to clarify, I served all 3 years, and I served from the first day to the last day, and I tried to make every day, the best day that I could make it. I went out on a good note, and over the years back here in the United States, I've been able to have like JET alumni officer positions and go to conferences to try to bring back ways to make the JET Alumni Association successful to the people that may be over on the JET program now, but might be wanting to come back and that sort of thing. But I guess a challenge that I had initially was, in 2004, going to elementary schools was kind of a newer thing for ALTs. So there really wasn't like a blueprint or like a curriculum, or you might go to one elementary school, and that elementary school has a really good infrastructure in terms of like books and the bag of tricks that you need to kind of make a elementary school visit happen. There might be some people at the school that know some sort of English to kind of help you with communications, because at the time that I first went to Japan, my Japanese was really basic. It was really good for an English teacher, but about it.
Yeah.
And so that experience was a challenge, but for me, I kind of took that as a takeaway, which I would use in interviews when I would interview back in the United States for teaching positions. Some personal victories, and I would tell about the challenge of taking on a elementary school visit, but then being able to turn it around into it became a situation to where my successor, when they came onto the position, they had a blueprint, they had lesson plans, they had a way to kind of make those lessons work. So wasn't like that initially, but at least I could say that when I left, that situation was there for those to follow.
That's cool. So you kind of left the place better than what you found it then, is a good way to say
Exactly.
it. That's cool, yeah. We should say. Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry. That kind of became a like a battle cry when it came to those periods where you may get frustrated. You're at a junior high school and you're not really being utilized in the way that you feel is best, or you feel like there's just more that I can do than there's this being a tape recorder and this sort of thing. And I would just say there was this one time that the teachers had a student. So in Saitama, there's parts of Saitama that have kind of a lot of different cultures. And I remember this one teacher had a student that was half Japanese, half Filipino, and the student didn't really know any Japanese, and it was a math teacher. And basically the Japanese teacher of English said to me to basically work with this student to help him kind of understand math and understand numbers, because there was just really a challenge with that student. So I wasn't at that school being used as a, you would think of it as an ALT would be used, but I was still being utilized and adding value to the school by being able to provide support, because my native language of English and this student's understanding of English made it possible for me to support the school with giving him specialized instruction.
Cool. Yeah, I would say there's always that's kind of a special case, but there's always something you can do, even if you can't be a ALT, ALT as maybe you should be. There's always other stuff you can do that the school would appreciate, even if they don't seem like it at first glance. Like you said, you can even do something for the next ALT, right? If you're leaving, you could get stuff ready for them and make it cool.
Absolutely.
For them, but that's kind of cool. So, so just to be clear here, so you said 3 years, so more than breaking the contract, really, you just didn't renew, right, for the fourth and fifth year, right? Is the way to say it better? That's a better way to say it?
Yeah, and to be quite honest with you, I don't know if that was 2007 when my third year on JET was completed. I really don't know if that fourth and fifth year was like publicly advertised, or if it was widely known amongst the JET program. It was kind of one of those deals where my wife and I kind of set out, when we started saying, okay, we're going to do 3 years. We're going to make the most of those 3 years. And then after those 3 years, we're going to return back to the United States. So like I said, my wife is from Japan, but I met her in California when she was a study abroad student. So, we had kind of started out that way, and that was kind of the way that we wanted to go back. So
cool. Okay. So it's more like so you kind of had a play in your mind when you started. Hey, 3 years is going to be it, and then we're gonna dip out after those 3 years, no matter what the JET program was like, right? Yes,
exactly. And
cool.
Sure.
That's cool. Okay. So then I guess now we can look back on your full 3 years tenure. What is something you wish you knew when you started that would have made it even better than maybe it was for you now? Looking back now, it's a positive experience, right? How do you think about it now, looking back?
Looking back, it was a great 3 years. It was everything that I had hoped for it to be. Like I said, I was introduced to Japan via the United States Navy. Yokosuka, Japan. 2 years on a aircraft carrier is really a challenging and difficult lifestyle, but it did give me enough of an introduction or exposure to Japan and Japanese culture to really say this is something that I really have to do, or really would regret if I didn't do sooner rather than later. So yeah, the JET experience was great on all fronts. I guess like I said, there were 16 ALTs when I first started, and then year 2 came and we started out with 16, and then there was a downsizing. So where ALTs on JET in Saitama, relatively close to Metro Tokyo, they're probably few and far between now, and the reason being is because there's such a a surplus of people who have those qualifications that can do it for a competitor to JET in the private sector. So that started year 2, and it was really a new experience for the Board of Education that I was under contract with, and it was a new experience for all of us that were involved. And So that experience definitely kind of I guess reinforced the game plan of going back after 3 years, because it was a period there where I thought I was going to have to go back 2 years, or I was going to have to relocate to a different part of Saitama, which really wasn't favorable at the time. I mean, it's kind of a first world problem. I have to go maybe an hour and a half away from Tokyo, and opposed to people that are in the remote parts of Japan, where maybe going to Tokyo would be the equivalent of like going to a different country in terms of distance and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Yeah. So now that's happening even more and more, obviously, as Jet program is losing spots to the more aggressively priced other options that the Board of Educations have, because Jet is the most expensive. They still are, and but it makes sense why they are, because they offer the best product, some would say, and I think that's definitely true. At least the most weeded out teachers are on the Jet program for sure. I mean, no one can agree with that. And and the Jet program pays the best too. I mean, it's not even close. So obviously some Board of Educations though don't value that as much as the bottom line on the budgets and stuff. So that's, since you've left, it's only continued. They're at an all-time low now, and they might go up a little bit. They're going up a little bit now because the 2020, I don't know if you kept up with the ALT news, the hot news in the world, but the next the education kind of group said we want ALT in every single junior high school and elementary school. So there's a lot more influx of Jets, so just influx of ALTs in general, and Jets are being beneficiary of that in some ways. Dispatch companies even more. You kind of were in that mix of, so you were kind of at that place where, I'm not sure if it happened to you, but I'm sure some of those Jets, the 16 Jets said, hey, we don't got a place for you, or you have to move if you want to stay with Jet. How did that work for them?
Yeah, so it basically worked, as you said, the Board of Education basically, they wanted us to decide who was going to stay or who was going to go. So pretty interesting way to manage that. And a lot of people basically who had indicated that they wanted to do their third year or their second year, they basically said this was going to be it at the end of the time. So it basically came down to about 3 or 4 people being over the head count that they wanted. So they were still going to keep some Jet teachers, but they were also going to have a hybrid approach of having non-Jet teachers also taking care of ALT duties that third year that I was there. So it was awkward because of that, and there were some ALTs that are on the Jet program that of really no fault of their own had to either make a different plan, whether to relocate to a different Board of Education in Saitama or just call it quits in terms of being an ALT. So fortunately for me, I was able to stay, and it was that third year was kind of a third year of it was kind of bittersweet. And I say this because I was under the impression that lesser people meant being more productive, having more to do in terms of being an ALT, and it really didn't happen. Unfortunately, this is where the person, one of the Jet teachers, basically decided that they weren't going to stay anymore, and they broke their contract. And so that was kind of like I guess the most disappointing thing. But it was one of those situations, I guess, looking back, I didn't have much of any control over it. Maybe it could have been prevented if the downsizing the previous year would have been handled in a better way. But you really can't say it at this point. So
yeah. Everyone has their own reasons for breaking contract, and obviously it's something that is not a happy. I don't think it's a happy choice for anybody. If it happens, it shouldn't be, for sure.
Right.
And it does affect a lot of people when that happens. But sometimes it is the right move in some situations. I don't know if it was this person. So I guess, like, kind of to sum it up, though, I mean, when, just so people know, how did that affect you? How did that affect your other LTs when that person broke the contract? What did you know what did Jet have to deal with when that happened, do you think?
I'll just kind of go with what I the effects that happened to us and happened to the other ALTs in our BOE and the schools that we worked at and that sort of thing. So basically, the downsizing kind of disrupted things. We had a ALT that was working at a high school that, in this particular high school, was known as this program called a Super English high school. I don't even know if they have that type of program anymore, but basically it was supposed to be a high school that was really focused on English and making sure that the high school students, when they graduated, they could do they could actually produce in English, being able to speak English, being able to understand English, not just to do the reading and writing aspects of English. And this thing basically, that position got affected. So they put in another jet teacher, and then that teacher decided to break their contract. And then when they broke the contract, it really, I could tell it really bothered the school, because basically they decided that they weren't even going to bring an ALT back for the rest of the school year. I don't think they liked all the changing. But basically the Super English program, if I recall correctly, they basically had a homestay program with a organization in Canada. So in the summertime, the high school students would go to Canada, and it was a job of the ALT, in addition to the classwork, to get these students ready for that. There was also some kind of warm-up opportunities prior to this trip to Canada, which the students would take a trip to this place in Fukushima called the British Hills. So the British Hills is a resort, but they have educational programs. And one time I was able to go with a couple other ALTs to kind of facilitate training. So this was a kind of situation that was involved directly with the ALT that quit. And like I said, the JET teachers, or the Japanese teachers of English, probably in coordination with the Board of Education, just decided we're not even going to bring an ALT back for the remainder of the school year because of all the changes, the instability with that position. A few weeks later, we had our speech contest, and this was something that had gone on ever since JET had been used in that town, and it was almost going to be a situation where we couldn't have the speech contest because the ALTs were one of the key people, in terms of judges for the speech contest. In the grand scheme of things, that was, it was unfortunate that these type of these things that were going on were being disrupted just because a person couldn't quit. And you're 100% correct. There are always a time when it's best just to call it quits. But unfortunately, I can't say that this was a time for that to happen. And I prefaced the fact, previous to all this, we had a situation, where people were downsized, and people who really wanted to stay and really wanted to, put their best foot forward and do everything that they wanted to do, they weren't given an opportunity to do so because the BOE, I guess, chose the wrong person. Yeah,
that's unfortunate for those people. Yeah. So then, yeah, some people couldn't stay that wanted to stay, but then he stayed, or he or she stayed, and then he or she said, I want to leave early. So yeah, that's unfortunate, but that can happen. It does affect a lot of people, guys. So if you're going to do that, really think about it. Ask yourself, is there no other way for me to solve my problem? In the end, was there any conversation of how to fix his problem, or did he say, I'm done, and quickly leave? If you can share that, of course. If you don't want to share that, I understand. That's totally fine.
No, that's fine. I can definitely share, what happened. It kind of came out of the blue. It didn't, it wasn't like I said, you have, at one point we had, 16 ALTs. So you had kind of like this extra infrastructure of support. Obviously, when all the downsizing happened, that kind of went away. So I don't know if that affected things. But there was just a lack of communication in terms of like why this person didn't want to do it anymore. The only thing that they could tell us was, there was uncertainty with the position, and they basically felt with all the uncertainty that they needed to look for other opportunities. But the thing is that the opportunity wasn't even, in Japan. It was an opportunity back in their home country. So it just didn't make any sense, and it was definitely such a foreign thing to happen, to the Japanese, teachers of English and this sort of thing, because just up and quitting is such a, I guess a foreign concept in the Japanese culture. So.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. I guess the only thing I would say is kind of to the counterpoint is, as you know, as you experience yourself, the ALT position is always in flux, right? Year by year, I should say. Not in the middle of the school year, it's very rare to lose your job, but even if you do very bad stuff, actually, they can't really fire you in the middle of the year. However, it's usually a 1-year contract for a lot of people. So every year you do have to deal with that kind of thing of, hey, do I have a job next year? And last year I interviewed someone 6 months ago that, that happened to me twice, where I had my ALT contract and, we didn't get the contract with the BOE this year in this area, so you don't have a job, James. And then it's back to the grind of finding a job. So I guess I could say, well, I was going to counterpoint my own counterpoint, but I guess I should say, if you could find a position that is more stable, obviously that could be the correct move for your career. However, hopefully, you know what I mean? Like, there is some kind of value to that, especially when you saw your company can say, hey, you got to go. And they did in that same thing. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Your points are spot on. And I will, plug, your website, because I was, perusing around your website and came across your article and about, to break your contract or not. And I thought your article was spot on. I think you preface it from the very beginning that it's only like a tiny, minute percentage of ALTs that are ever going to, actually do this sort of thing. And you listed reasons why you may want to do it. I guess I would just basically say that for me, I went back a little bit older, a little bit wiser, went back as a married man. And so for me, it was, I had a plan why I wanted to go back to Japan and why I wanted to work in Japan. So I would always tell anybody that's doing the ALT position is ask yourself, why did you start doing this, and why do you why do you want to work in Japan? Why do you want to live in Japan? And just realize you need to have, for me it was a battle cry, is how can I make this place better than the way I found it? And even if it's just a small victory, even though it might be a challenging situation, at the end of the day, you can, kind of hold your head high saying, I was able to make it happen. And again, when you have those interviews, you need to have those stories to share as, why you are to be chosen instead of the other 20 people that might be applying for the same position. And I can tell you, as somebody that looks to hire good people, I always like it when I can hear how somebody overcame some sort of difficult situation. But basically, there is that unfortunate thing with the ALT position, which is, again, I'm basing my comments right now off of listening to your podcast and kind of being active with the JET Alumni Association. But the JET position, the ALT position, is not a very stable position, and it goes, like you said, year to year, and that's why you really have to be finding ways to be the solution to the problem. And you need to be establishing relationships, creating allies who you can possibly go to defend your position. It is challenging for contracting agencies to find a good quality person with all the things going on in terms of money and length of stay for contracts and that sort of thing. But I think an ALT would really do itself a favor if they can really create that relationship with a Japanese teacher of English to have it to where that Japanese teacher of English basically says, I can't I can't really do my job without this guy. I need this person here. So those would be the things that I'd be kind of trying to do. And again, you do have to factor in the reality that it's not going to be, this job isn't going to be forever. So, what can you be doing to make your stay in Japan better, I guess?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's what I would say. It's always just wise to, obviously, the first thing you got to do is do the job you're getting paid for above all else. But that doesn't say, as you know, the ALT position does offer a lot of free time. You can be working towards your next opportunity all the time. And I think I recommend that, the ALT job is not forever, and you should never think of it that way, because if you do think of it that way, you're going to get this rude awakening at some point, you know what I mean? And because it's not going to have, it can't last forever. But, so obviously we talked about a great time. I guess I asked the question before I kind of changed my question midstream though. So, is there anything you could, looking back, you wish you knew before you started the JET program that maybe would have made it a little bit better for you?
I guess for me, it does, the position does say, ALT, assistant language teacher. In truth, not really a teacher. I think a letter that the JET program provided that I could use to kind of explain my JET experience to employers back in the United States after the program. They basically said that I was a language training consultant.
That's a fancy way to say it. Yeah.
Yes. So I guess when I went on the JET program, I didn't really have like aspirations to teach, even though I do come from a teaching background. My mother's a retired school teacher, but I'm definitely in the teaching field now, and I owe it all to the JET program. I guess I would have focused more on maybe credentials while on JET, maybe the teaching English to speakers of other languages certificate, or other things in that regard to be the best teacher that I could be. So when I did leave JET, I could just be that much further along in being a good teacher. The opportunity to actually teach on JET was there, mainly when you went to the elementary schools. Not so much when not to slight the junior high schools or that sort of thing, but we did have that one high school that was considered like that super English high school, where the teacher was actually doing a lot of teaching carrying out a lot of teaching duties, and not a assistant to the teacher type of thing. So I think I would have just been a better, more in tuned and more focused. How can I be the best teacher I can be?
Good stuff. Yeah, that's good stuff. I guess to wrap it up though, we talked a lot about the JET program, but I don't want to. When you went back home, you started this thing that is known as Two Birds, One Stone Learning. Exactly. So what was the thinking behind that? What led you starting that?
Sure. So I went back to the United States, and for me, I grew up in South Carolina, and I'd been away from South Carolina quite a long time. So that was where my wife and I ended up initially after JET. I found a teaching position at Clemson University, working for a company that specializes in bringing over international students and preparing them for colleges in the United States. And so I taught a year at Clemson University, and then became a director at another language school in Columbus, Ohio, which is where I'm at now. And when I did my homework preparing for Columbus, Ohio, because Columbus, Ohio was just a place on a map before I had the interview, I realized that Honda was in the Columbus area, and they were a pretty big player here in town. And I knew that would be a good opportunity for my wife. And then ultimately, it became a good opportunity, not just for my wife, but for me, because the opportunity that brought me to Columbus went away. But I was at that point, I had bought a house and had a baby on the way. So I was going back to school, and I was taking my MBA, and I drew up a business plan on basically what became Two Birds, One Stone Learning. So halfway through, JET, and now I started Two Birds, One Stone Learning, and basically we provide test prep, English speaking, conversation, homework assistance, primarily to the Japanese community. It's just where the opportunity is at for us right now. I'm thinking that this opportunity could be done in other parts of the country, based off of somebody who's looking for a solid brand. And this is a brand that I've been working on for about 5 years now.
Awesome. That takes a lot of twists and turns there in that time after JET, but you found that you got something cool here set up. That's cool. Interesting. You saw the chance there. I guess the link with Honda was because you knew your wife could get a job there more than you saw a business opportunity there for yourself to do the teaching stuff.
Yes. Obviously, the knee-jerk response was my wife. Even in South Carolina, she was working for a Japanese textile company that made the carpet for the interior of Toyotas and Hondas and things of that nature that were being manufactured here in the United States. But to be right in the backyard of one of the largest automotive makers, Japanese automotive makers, was definitely an opportunity that I knew was going to be good for us.
Awesome. Yeah, that's so. Shared a lot of good stuff. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about this? Where can they find Two Birds, One Stone Learning if they want to learn more about it?
Sure. So we do have a web presence. It's a website that's going to be getting a major overhaul over the summer, but our web address is onestonelearning.com. It's all one word, www.onestonelearning.com, all spelled out.
And yeah, I mean, that's. I think it's also interesting. You said you kept be a part of the alumni program of JET and stuff. So you kind of were the perfect person that JET is looking for, guys. So this is the kind of person that JET is looking for, and they hired a good one when they got you because you obviously cared about the job. And then number one, you cared about leaving this place better than you found it, and you were part of the alumni program, and you found a good job with teaching after. So obviously they found a good person with you. So I hope more ALTs can be like you, Daniel, for sure.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, James, and I just want to also thank you for this wonderful podcast. It's a podcast that I listen to a lot. Also, your website is second to none. The content, the whole thing is just really great.
Awesome. Thanks, Daniel. I want to get you back on the show sometime in the future. We learn about the next stage of Two Birds, One Stone Learning, maybe.
Yes, sir. I look forward to definitely coming back on.
Sure. You have a good one.
All right, you too. Take care.
I really hope you enjoyed today's Inside Japan podcast. Dive deeper into our world and learn more about what awaits you. Check out altinsider.com. And for regular, up-to-the-minute job postings, check into jobsinjapan.com for the next big gig. Please tune in for our regular excursions into the world of Japan, and good luck. Ganbatte!
Japan.com